agenda, I'd like to introduce Christopher Chang, the head of investments at Invest Hong Kong Canada, who will deliver a short presentation. Over to you, Chris.
Thanks, Greg. I'd like to thank everybody for taking part today. I'd like to thank the NCFA for joining with InvestHK to help us spread the message about what a great center of foreign direct investment Hong Kong is, particularly when it comes to the fintech industry. Please give me a second to share my slides, and I'll get started. So I'd like to start off with dispelling a few myths and bringing to light the facts about Hong Kong. It's not been a big secret that Hong Kong has been in the news over the last several years, what with demonstrations and with the pandemic. But what I'd like to share with everybody is what Hong Kong actually is. It is one of the world's top capital markets. It is one of the world's leading financial centers. As Secretary Hui said, it is number 3 in the world. It is one of the leading investment hubs for FDI inflows in Asia. It is the best location for IPOs and M&As in Asia Pacific. It is an easy place to do business. It does have one of the best tax regimes. I'll cover that in a minute. It is a jurisdiction that's ruled by law and with clean governance. The basic law is intact. It is based off of the Commonwealth law that unites the former Commonwealth nations as well as Great Britain. What many people don't know is that in terms of tech infrastructure, it is number 3 in terms of ICT adoption. I think that most people who have an impression of Hong Kong, first and foremost, think of it as a financial center and not so much as a center for innovation and technology. Another news story that you may or may not be aware of is that Hong Kong is part of a super economic region called the Greater Bay Area, the GBA for short. The GBA is basically a bunch of anchor cities that are centered around the Pearl River Delta of China and effectively are run as an economic jurisdiction. This super economic region has the same GDP as Canada, but it has about 90 million people. And in about 10 years, it is foreseen that the GDP for the Greater Bay Area will exceed that of Japan, thereby placing it in the world's top 5 GDPs. And by any indicators of today, it's well on its way to achieving that status. Now, this is a story of transformation, and we're talking about transformation of the traditional industries. Hong Kong, as you know, has been a financial capital since the 1960s. And so the financial services industry has been a particular recipient of innovation and technology changes. The others being tourism, trading, logistics, and professional and producer services. But for all intents and purposes, what we're talking about today is financial services. And with a legacy of financial services going all the way back like 5 decades, it was sort of a no-brainer that bringing in new technology to transform an industry would be applied to financial services rather by default. And as a result, as of today, Hong Kong has a thriving fintech ecosystem with 160 plus banks, 160 plus insurers, and 800 plus wealth and asset managers. Hong Kong is well received to become a fintech global center. Right now, there are 8 virtual banks and 4 virtual insurers. I believe that Secretary Hui pointed out there were a number of fintech subsectors which were of which have great opportunity as of today. I would like to stress that these subsectors are RegTech, InsurTech, and WealthTech. And I'm pleased to say that there are a number of companies, particularly in Ontario and in Quebec, that are in those sectors. And we've introduced a number of them to the regulator of Hong Kong, who happens to be a sister agency of InvestHK, and managed to handhold them into introducing their demos to potential users, namely the big banks and insurance companies. So INT investment is official government policy. Through the Innovation Technology Commission and through their public pod, the Innovation Technology Venture Fund, there has been a growth of startups and mid-sized companies that have been in Hong Kong over the last 10 years and growing, each one being a recipient of some sort of funding, whether public or private. The public fund is doled out by a number of agencies of the Hong Kong government, such as the SFC, the Securities and Futures Commission, the Hong Kong Monetary Authority, the Insurance Authority, as well as branches of InvestHK. But compared to, in terms of the Hong Kong government funding schemes, fintech companies receive a fair share of it. And as you can see here, in terms of the public sector pool, the fintech companies receive funding all the way from first implementation, first activation of a company, all the way to a growth phase. Now, if you compare the division of investment for companies that are based in Hong Kong as compared to, say, other jurisdictions, namely Singapore, the philosophy is relatively different. Hong Kong does have a preference for companies further along the development time frame, as opposed to Singapore, which has a preference for companies at the angel investment stage or at the seed stage, while Hong Kong has a preference for past Series B capital or at the growth stage, thereby implying that a preference for companies further along the life cycle is emphasized. Now, as much as I was talking about the public side of funding, it's private funding that actually takes the lion's share of capitalization. Hong Kong is one of the funding capitals of the world. It is the second largest fund pool in Asia Pacific after China, but with, fair to say, the most advanced capitalization knowledge in Asia Pacific. 60 to 70% of all outgoing renminbi from China is funneled through Hong Kong. Furthermore, capital going into China is also funneled through Hong Kong, mostly because of the intellectual property protection as well as protection for financial assets. What that means is there's an immense amount of capitalization that can be found in Hong Kong, as well as the expertise for investing that capital into companies deemed of high value. In terms of where the private sector funding is going to, you can see at the bottom of this chart, predominantly it's going to services, business services, financial services, and telecommunications. In terms of number of investments, IT, computer-related financial services also factors in. So as you can see, financial services is one of the core destinations for investments on the private equity and VC side. So Christopher Hui did mention that Hong Kong is a leading center of IPO fundraising, and it is true. Hong Kong and NASDAQ seem to be at each other's throats when it comes to IPOs. I think the Alibaba secondary IPO listing back in 2019 created a landslide of applications of companies wishing to do a secondary listing. At last check, about a month ago, there were about 200 companies on the wait list. And so I had been personally struggling to get some Canadian companies up closer to their exit day, but basically was told, no, they have to wait. Hong Kong does benefit from a unique centrality. It's about 4 hours from Asia's key markets and 5 hours from half the world's population, being China and India. It is directly connected to the other major financial markets of London and New York. And so Hong Kong does benefit from its location. It does also benefit from the lowest taxes in the region. Personal tax rate is capped at 15%. Corporate tax rate is capped at 16.5%. And surprise for many Canadians in the crowd, there is no concept of an HST in a jurisdiction like Hong Kong. So a little bit, I'll end this with a little bit about InvestHK. We are a bureau of the Hong Kong government, especially in foreign direct investment and trade. We help, or at least the Canadian office, assist Canadian entities, whether they're corporate, academic, or government, into Asia via the Hong Kong platform and the GBA. With 31 locations, we are located in the Hong Kong Economic Trade Offices, otherwise known as consulates, around the world. And our remit is twofold. Our first remit is that we will help facilitate the capabilities, the services of companies that will help you do a soft landing in Hong Kong, such as lawyers or accountancies, corporate secretary, real estate, education. But in reality, there's a lot of companies that do that around the world. So it's actually our second service that we do for free that we're particularly proud of. And that is to say, once a company has placed operations in Hong Kong, if there is a new business opportunity, a potential partnership that they would like to pursue and are not sure how to approach it or don't have a direct contact, all they have to do is contact us and we will endeavor to make that happen. Whether it is a corporate, a government, academic, nonprofit, an association such as the Venture Capital Association, just let us know and we'll knock on the door for you. And we won't take part in that meeting, but we will at least try to make that meeting happen for you. So with that, I hand it back to Craig and wish everybody a good day. And if anybody have any questions, please feel free to send it to myself or send it to Craig. Thank you.